If you do not want to change, if you do not want to better yourself, if you do not want to break outside of this matrix, if you want to live in your comfortable delusion that they have built for you, do not watch these videos. Leave this channel.
Because when I step to the game, I rip that shit apart. My evolution with the ghettos from magic carpet, and I ain't finished. I
understand.
The whole
if you are
world
not
is in my
here
cart. When you fucking with me, you choose a role and play your part.
something that's outside of your own mind and accept others' minds and opinions, the way they think for themselves, to do not belong.
Shitty cards. I'm trying as hard as I can against all of the odds.
If you are not trying to be positive, if you are not trying to help create solutions while we discuss the problems and how they got here, you do not belong here. Negativity, hate, disrespect, name calling, those things will not be allowed here on this platform, and not in this empire. We are the ones, the true Americans, that want to be free and stand as we have always stood.
My lines burn like blunts getting smoked in the dark. Hella cooking shit up if your ass wanna spar. Barbecue your beef up like the seats in my car. Cool yourself off refrigerator and jar. Baby rappers been acting like this is not enough.
Yo, we in the building.
Forgot about that part.
Let's go.
Rappers been acting like this is not an art.
Ha. You forgot about that part. Tell them. Because they don't even know. This shit exclusive over here. Alright. Now, we got a lot of haters out there, a lot of people trying to make it seem like we don't know what we talking about. You know, we're not educated. They're trying to make it seem like there's something that is not clicking. And I'm moving the goalpost, this, that, and the other. I don't move the goalpost. You don't understand what the fuck I'm saying. And when I explain it in a different way to try to help you understand what I'm saying, you still try to act like you don't get it. So that's where we're at. Me and other panels, there's only certain panels that understand. I think there's an actual class level of individual, cognitively, mentally. There's different levels, all right? I understand where most people are coming from. They have a basic understanding of life. They don't have a complex, deep thinking, well-oriented, well-rounded, like, view of life. There's not many people that have that. Most people are in operation mode. What's the other one? Autopilot. Their brains aren't actively on, okay? And it's hard for me to go to other panels, especially when there are people that are like this. Because what it does is it puts me in a position I don't want to be in. Not only do I have to try to validate myself to these people that are irrelevant, and they can't understand what I'm saying. So, like, to try to get their validation, okay? That's the part that doesn't make any sense to me. To try to over-explain what I'm talking about here, okay? Because naturally, I shouldn't have to jump through all these fucking hoops to get you to understand my point. My point is simple, okay? I do my best to take the most complicated shit and break it down to something simple so regular folk can understand it. Now, if you have a lack of understanding, when I say something that takes complicated shit and breaks it to something simple, it blows your fucking mind that you hate it and it can't be that easy, it can't be that simple, because your life is complicated and it sucks. Now, I'm not going to sit here and do this on somebody else's panel and explain myself and argue with these people. There's no fucking point. I made my fucking point, okay? And my point is fucking solid. And you guys are trying to twist shit to try to make yourself look like you're doing something by trying to get me moded. You can't mode me, bro. All right? I've been doing this shit. Oh, you're not a good debater, and that's why whoever tore me up. No, bro, nobody tore me up. Nobody tore me up in a debate. People are trying to move the goalpost on me. All I did was explain some shit one time, and it hit different, and everybody was like, whoa, like, no, it can't be that simple. It's more complicated than that. No, you guys want things to be complicated because that's how you make money. I'm not doing this for money. I want to simplify shit for people so they can have common sense again. I want to bring common sense back. So I take all this complicated shit and I break it down to something simple so you could digest it. So we could have a legit conversation about it on a base level. As normal people, we can talk about things that are complex. Of course, we can help each other work on our critical thinking skills. Awesome. But how are you going to do something that you're not doing, right? If you're not having conversations and critically thinking and trying to evolve your perspective over time, or you grow, right? Grow. If you're not trying to grow, okay? If you're not trying to attain new knowledge, then there's really no point in having conversations with a lot of people unless you're trying to get something done. Fine. Get your shit done. Awesome. But don't try to do this deep philosophical shit if you're not trying to open up your mind and be able to grow and change, because all that's going to do is cause friction, arguments, and you're not going to get anywhere, not with anybody. And that's what's happening in our society. I have to address this shit. I was just on a panel, and everybody on there has this it's kind of ghetto in a way. All right, there's a couple people that I'm cool with, and I'm like, hey, I like you, I appreciate you, you're awesome. And then here's the thing. If you don't want to understand where I'm coming from, that's fine. If you want to stand on what you believe, that's cool too. But at least understand where I'm coming from. And if you don't want to understand me, then fine, it's whatever. Like, there's no point in having the conversation because I'm not getting anything from it. You're not getting anything from it. Aren't we just wasting time? When you could be talking to somebody that's going to get some shit done for you, and I could be talking to somebody that's going to help me grow and open up my mind. So when I hear the same basic arguments over and over and over again, I'm looking like, bro, everybody says that, and I already defeated that argument because this right here defeats that. No, you're moving the goalpost. No, I'm giving you the actual opposition to what you're saying. So what you're having is a point. For example, this is what got everybody thinking I'm crazy, because I said ambition / and being ambitious is a feminine quality. Oh, yes, that's a feminine quality. Of course it's a feminine quality. It fits right in there with women and the things that they want and love and desire, and that's what ambition is. And a man doesn't necessarily have this ambition to own the world and have the world. That's some guys. Yeah, some guys have that, like Jeff Bezos, whoever, right? They have that kind of mentality, but that's like a feminine quality. You see what I mean? When I say this, because men don't want the world. We're not trying to conquer the world. We want to give the world to our woman. We want to do something for our family, our legacy, the long-term situation. Now there's this thing going on with feminism versus masculinity, blah, blah, blah. I get it. And I'm pointing something out, that what we believe is masculine, okay, and what we believe is feminine might have gotten switched here. All right. So that's why I'm putting ambition specifically in the female category, because women, they want nice, shiny things. They love things. And people hate when I quote the Bible. Right. But I don't have any other reliable history book. OK, nothing that's trying to actually give me like life and the psychology. Right. I can't, with certain history, you can analyze the psychology behind those movements, like, oh, World War II and this, that, and the other, right? But how is that shit relevant to everyday life? Because that's not something we do every day. That's something that happened at a point in time back in the day, all right? And we are supposed to have overcome that by now. Now, I got to keep referencing the Bible. Why? Because that is a really good history book. And people are not trying to claim it as history. They're saying, oh, that's a religion. Nothing in there is true and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, then the Quran's not true if the Bible's not true. And then if we go down that rabbit hole, then nothing you guys say is true either. And we don't have any kind of baseline to build on. There's no common ground to build on. All right. So we're getting nowhere with the conversation. So if everything's going to be subjective, then it should stay subjective. And if that's the case, there's no solution, right? So the conversation is coming to naught. It's coming to nothing at all. It's not bearing any fruit. It's just a clash of two ideologies, and it's not going anywhere. And that's what most panels are. I promise you, I've been on them. All right. I'm finally getting my ass back to my lane where it's like, all right, fuck it. I don't even want to go into no panels unless it's going to be a legit conversation where, hey, I'm going to make my points and they're not sitting here trying to, oh, well, what does this mean? And what does that mean? If you know so much, like, bro, look, I'm not saying that I know every fucking thing and I don't know all the meanings to every fucking word, but every time I get a word, I bust open my dictionary. Yeah, this right here, this Webster's fucking dictionary from 1996. This is my fucking, it's got a thesaurus in there and everything. This is my shit. You tell me a word, I'm gonna look it up and be like, all right, fine. And then this is what I did on that other panel. I busted the book out, okay? The dictionary, all right? The biggest dick known to man, dictionary. See what I'm saying? Because this shit's huge. First of all. Second of all, it's got so much insight into the world. Dude, get this one specifically, right? Because this one is the specific one right here. Webster's New World Dictionary and Thesaurus. Okay, this is the hard copy, 1996 version, all right? So it doesn't have all these weird new shit. People keep coming up with these new weird words. Dude, the N word, N-A-G-G, hard R, it's not even in here. See what I'm saying? That we weren't even really utilizing that term. The term was Negro back in that day. You see what I'm saying? And now it's some different stuff. All right. And that's some old country stuff. If you bust out the other dictionary, the old world dictionaries, the other ones, they'll have those kinds of words. A big old brown one. You know what I'm saying? That big, thick brown one, bro. It had every word in there. Medical terms and shit. Historical terms. Religious terms. It described countries, the actual countries we're listing there. There are some really good dictionaries out there. Now, I don't have access to my other dictionary. That one is with the fam, so I would have to go visit to crack that book, but it's in a safe place. This one, though, this is where we went and we checked out ambition. The problem that we're having is everybody is under the impression that femininity now and femininity then are the same thing. All right? Feminine qualities are things that women possess naturally. All right? Naturally. A woman wants to be secure. Naturally. She wants to feel safe. Naturally. See what I mean? These things are natural. And a man, he's supposed to provide stability and protection naturally. All right? These are two natural things that we're supposed to do. She's pregnant, you gotta protect her, you gotta have stability, whether that's build a house and things like that. That's where ambition comes from. Ambition comes from your woman. The things you need to do for her to take care of her. That's where ambition comes from. Other than that, it's not really a masculine trait. Now, if a man is ambitious, then he's on a feminine trait. Why? Because he doesn't have to be ambitious for himself, for his own sake. He does not have to be ambitious, okay? He can do what he needs to do to get what he needs to get done so he can survive and live until something comes along, a family, friends, whatever it is. You decide you want to start a business, but why are you making those moves, right? Why would you want a family? Why would you want a woman? Why would you want to have a business? Why do you want to work? It's so you can not only eat, right? But naturally, we have an urge to build. We want to build so that way we can protect and we can secure and we can stabilize, okay? But that's our basic, that's our bare minimum. That's what we do as men. So I can't call that ambition. But when you start trying to go beyond that for access reasons, that's where it's ambitious. All right? Surviving is okay. Just going to work to get your pay, have your chill, be hanging out until God brings you that woman, that's okay. As soon as that woman comes into your life, you're going to start getting real ambitious. Why though? Because you want the best for her. You want to give her the things that she wants. You want to take care of her, protect her, things like that. If you really like her and you want to have a legacy, children, things like that. These are things that you would have to do. That's where the ambition comes from. It comes from the woman, because there's a lot of men, okay, and most men. I will say this for a fact, and I'll actually bring the AI into this if I need to. I'll research some shit, because like this is a great conversation. Most men are not ambitious. Okay? They're trying to figure out what to do so they can survive and maintain their existence long enough for something to happen. All right? When you start getting ambitious, that is coming from an outside. It's coming from an outside source. It's not coming from within you. Because you have to think, why do you want what ambition is? Ambition here. All right? This is interesting. Okay? Because it has a noun. A going around to solicit votes. But we're not doing that, right? That can be touched on a separate level. This one right here, a strong desire for fame, okay, power, etc. That could be strong desire for family, strong desire for whatever you want, right? And that second definition is the thing so desired, okay? So ambition, right? Doing the bare minimum is not ambitious. Surviving is not ambitious. Okay? When I asked the women, do you want your man to be ambitious? They said yes. But why? Because that contributes to their well-being, their whatever, blah, blah, blah. And see, you want him to be ambitious, so full of or showing ambition, demanding great effort. So you want your man to be demanding great effort. Okay, you want him to be ambitious, so he's gonna demand great effort from you. Is that okay? Are you gonna do that effort? Are you gonna do it? Because women are already ambitious, because they're demanding a reason to be ambitious. See what I mean? Now, this is something I couldn't get across. I couldn't get it across to other people. It sucks because it's logical. So that's why we need to go into a different cut here. With my situation, I'm trying to be as logical as possible, trying to be as reasonable as possible. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that. And ultimately, I want everybody to feel comfortable and be able to say what they want to say within reason, so we can actually build something. All right? I have no idea why everybody is so hostile and so hateful. I'll never understand it. I'll never get it. Okay? I wish there was a way that people could better understand me. That's why I did this here, so they could try to go back, re-understand what I said, but they'll try to clip it, do dumb shit. You know how people are. I'm not mad at them. Fuck it. People are gonna be people. I can't be mad. You know, I gotta forgive them, because they know not what they do. And it's not something that I'm doing on purpose over here. I'm not trying to hurt nobody. I ain't trying to make nobody think hard or nothing. I just thought people were thinkers, you know, and they just can't handle it. That's fine. That's fine. And that's how we know we're not supposed to be dealing with everybody. I'm cool with that. And I think that's why I need to just go ahead and stay on my own shit right here and just be in my zone. So that way I can avoid any kind of negativity I got a lot of people praying for my downfall, and they have all these criticisms about just their ignorance. Oh, your channel's this, your channel's that, blah blah blah. Like whatever, man. Honestly, I don't really give a fuck anymore. Most people that I'm interacting with, they're not the greatest people. So that's why I'm gonna stay here. I'll probably go to a couple places. I feel like there's a couple of them that are actually like good, nice to be on, shit like that. We have great conversations. We make a lot of headway. Raging Tomato, shout out to the Raging Tomato. Shout out to the Gauntlet. You know what I'm saying? That is the best panel I've been on so far. It's my favorite. Yeah, sometimes my ideas come out a little funny, but at least they can work with me for the most part. And then, some people show their ignorance still, but I mean, that's why they drop out of the conversation and they don't say anything. And that's better that way. And I just think we need more rapport within the community that we have here. And it's very sad. A lot of people are just not really, they just don't know, man. They have no idea what the fuck is going on. And then they're acting like I'm being ambiguous. I'm not. I'm being very clear. They just don't want to accept what I'm saying. That's fine though. And that's why we know this isn't for everybody. Not everybody's, intellectually bound. Or I mean, intellectually unbound. I'm sorry. They have restrictions on their actual capacity for intellect. And it's sad. It's sad. Damn. I mean, very sad. It's incredible, man. This shit's incredible. Like, what the fuck? Like, who the fuck? How the fuck? What the fuck? These motherfuckers is crazy. Woo! Damn, man. I don't even know where to go from there with that shit, bro. It's getting on my nerves because it's like everywhere I go, I just think they don't want. I just think maybe it's because I have a lighthearted voice and I break things down the way I break them down. Maybe they're just afraid of my intellectual capacity. Maybe they're just intimidated by my actual common sense and my logic. Maybe I'm making some points to them that they can't handle. And that's highly probable. Okay? Nobody wants to be told, you feel me, that they wrong. So all I could do is make my point. And if my point makes sense, they tend to just try to write it off as some goobly gop and say moving the goalpost. That's not moving the goalpost. That shit hit and that shit makes sense. And motherfuckers just don't like it. And I don't give a fuck. Fuck you. You don't like it. I'm making sense. I'm breaking down these complicated things down to something so simple, and it bothers you. Why? Is it because my intellectual capabilities are a little higher than yours? Or is it because you didn't think of that first? Or because if I'm right, that shatters your worldview and now everything you're doing is wrong? Oh, shit. That's why y'all don't want to bring the Bible into it. And here's the thing. The Bible is my best example on how to deal with people. What? Yeah, I know. If I was about the Quran, trust me, I'd be up here saying a whole lot of other shit. Bruh, believe that. So I have no idea what y'all think is going on here. Okay? But I'm not playing. Everybody's trying to play and crack jokes and shit. I don't give a fuck about your jokes. If we're gonna crack a joke, make it funny. and make it about what we're talking about, not each other, you goofy ass losers. What the fuck? Y'all just haters, bro. You got nothing but negativity in you. You can't be positive and you can't think outside the box you're stuck in, which is why you're so small-minded. And psychologically, what? Inflexible. Psychologically inflexible. Your psychological inflexibility is your diagnosis. The plasticity of your neurological, chemical, whatever in the fuck's in your brain is all fucked up and it's stuck and it's rock solid and you can't fucking learn anything new. You can't juggle around information in your head to try to make sense of the things you think you know. And the longer you stay in the shit you stay in, you realize shit. But sometimes it takes motherfuckers a lot longer to go to understand something. So continue to get your fucking ass whooped in life. And then when you start to wise up, shit will change. Me, I'm wising the fuck up, which is why I'm here. I'm doing this shit for a reason. Not for no fucking money. You could throw a tip if you want, whatever. I'm not doing this shit for subscribers. I love everybody that watches my show. Trust me. Awesome. I appreciate you. But I still have to put this shit out nonetheless. And here's the thing. Anybody want to hear what the fuck I said? Hey, yo, I did an episode on that. Go check out the clips. Go check out the fucking episode. Nah, bro, I'm not finna argue with you because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So from now on, I'm not debating shit. There ain't no fucking debate because y'all don't fucking know shit. And the people that do know shit, okay, then you'll understand what the fuck I'm talking about. Whether what I'm saying is going to be a popular thing to implement, that's a different conversation. But you know what the fuck I'm saying actually has some merit. And that's the shit that scares y'all because I'm black or I have color in my skin and I could think clearly. It scares people. They don't know too much about me. I don't give them all my information. I'm not too friendly, but I'm very polite. And I don't mind building rapport. I have a couple favorites and we have great conversations, wonderful conversations. I've had guests up here. I have, but we have to remember not everybody is like us or me or whatever you want to see. All right. I'm gonna actually dig into some statistics right now. I think this will be a good time for that. All right, go ahead and reply to that last statement I made, and then I want to ask you a new question because I got into the psychology of people between men and women, masculinity and femininity, and I believe the masculine traits we hold right now may be the feminine traits, and some of these feminine traits that women are holding right now may be masculine traits. So I'm trying to get a separation between 4 feminine traits and 4 masculine traits that kind of cover that whole thing. But let's focus on the end of the last conversation real quick before we begin this.
Right. Genesis says the water rose 15 cubits above the highest mountains. And if a cubit roughly 18 inches, that's only about 22 feet, which is nowhere near enough to cover something like Everest. That's actually one of the bigger arguments for either a local regional flood rather than a truly global one. Or, in your framework, it supports the idea that the measurement system itself was different back then, tying back to your bigger cubit theory. Okay, masculine and feminine traits, I'm ready. What 4 are you thinking for each side?
Well, I do kind of want to touch on this global flood a little bit more before we get to the masculine and feminine. So with this global flood, it does look like there are huge, when you're looking at the satellite, huge water marks and erosion marks from all over all the lands. And there are areas of the land that look washed away. And if we know from local flood evidence, we've seen trees and grass and all kinds of things uprooted in smaller, more local floods that are pretty devastating to the communities they hit. Now, think about a global flood, okay? It wouldn't take a lot of water to actually flood the whole world, but it would take a lot more water to make it reach up in those mountains. So that's what's giving me the cubit situation here. Now, if we look back in that day, there was giants in those days, okay? So a cubit could be relative to the giant's heights. And then what they said something about L's, how some kind of L's, how many L's was a giant? How big was that? So now we can get into our actual measurements, and then we can put an L against the cubit, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a solid angle actually. If the cubit was based on giant proportions rather than average human forearm length, that alone could explain why 15 cubits covering the mountains seems too small using our modern measurement. The actual real-world equivalent could be way taller. An L, by the way, is a separate old measurement, roughly 45 inches, a bit over double a standard cubit, used mostly for cloth and fabric length in ancient and medieval times, not architecture like cubits were. So if you're trying to reverse engineer giant height from those units, the L might not be the right thread to pull. Cubit's still your main lever here.
I was just trying to get the height that was mentioned in the Bible of the giants, so that way we can figure out these dimensions. Because if the cubit and the L are switched, that may make a difference, maybe.
Ah, gotcha. You're looking for Goliath specifically. He's described as 6 cubits and a span tall in the Hebrew text, which at standard 18-inch cubits comes out to around 9 feet 9 inches. Some older Greek manuscripts actually say 4 cubits and a span instead, closer to 6 foot 9. So there's real textual disagreement on his height, depending on which version you're reading, which honestly might be exactly the kind of measurement inconsistency you're chasing.
Yeah, but I'm getting more further back, the ancient giants, because they said the giants were a certain amount of L's tall. And I'm trying to see what those L's are. How tall is that? How many L's were those giants? It was 3,000 or 300 or something.
So found it. The Book of Enoch says, the giants were 3,000 L's tall, taken literally with a standard L around 18 inches. That's roughly 4,500 feet. Absurdly tall. Basically impossible. Most scholars actually think it's a scribal exaggeration or error, but if you take it at face value, it does suggest either the L was a wildly different unit back then, or the number itself got corrupted in translation over the centuries, which honestly loops right back to your bigger point about ancient measurements not matching what we assume today.
All right, so the cubit, how big is that? And then the L, how big is that? And let's see if they are interchangeable.
So a standard cubit is about 18 inches, based on forearm length. An L historically varies a lot, depending on region and era. An English L was around 45 inches, but in the ancient Hebrew context, that earlier search actually said an L is roughly close to a cubit, maybe a cubit and a span added on, so more like 27 inches. So they're not fully interchangeable. An L tends to run bigger than a cubit, but they're in the same general family of body-based measurements, not wildly different systems. If you swap the giant's 3,000 L's for cubits instead, you'd get slightly less absurd, but still thousands of feet tall either way.
Okay, the Earth seems pretty big, pretty spanful, pretty expansive. I'm pretty sure they could fit that on the planet. It probably wouldn't be a very high population of them. Reproduction for giants might be a lot different. And then we have to think about the flood, right? And if the flood went that high, then that will cover mountains. And then if we look at these mountains that look like petrified trees, um, we could look and we could probably examine and see they most likely are petrified trees. When we look at petrified tree stumps smaller, they look just like those mountains, with the moss and all the different things on them. So I just wanted to make this, and not only that, it looks like there's cut marks, right? And this is something that's pretty awesome, with those specific mountains that look like ancient tree stumps that are huge. And then if we actually try to estimate how big that tree is, it would give something that size a shade. So if we interchange the L with the cubit for the English L, right? And we use the English L, okay? Then let's see how big that arc would be.
If you swap the standard cubit out for the English L, 45 inches instead of 18, the arc's length jumps from 450 feet all the way up to 1125 feet. That's about 0.21 miles, so pretty darn close to your quarter-mile estimate, actually landing right in that neighborhood.
So is it possible that this may have been a loose translation and these measurements got messed up in these scriptures? Because if we go by the cubit and the tabernacle, then that makes sense. If we go by the L for the Noah's Ark and the how high the water went up, we might be able to get the kind of flood, the kind of dimensions that we need to actually make that point. So that's all I'm trying to get at on that.
Yeah, that's actually a coherent hypothesis. Different texts, tabernacle versus ark versus giants, may have used different unit systems, cubits for one, L's for another, and translators later flattened them into one word cubit in English Bibles, losing that distinction. That would neatly explain why the ark math feels too small while the tabernacle math checks out fine. They were never the same unit to begin with. That's a genuinely solid research thread, honestly. Worth someone digging into the original Hebrew and Aramaic terms directly to see if different words were actually used in each passage.
All right, awesome. So that right there would be the determining factor. Do you think you can look and see, based off of the information you have, and knock that little out and see if it works for us?
Okay, so here's the actual finding, and it's honestly the opposite of what we were hoping. The Hebrew word for cubit in both Noah's Ark and the tabernacle is the exact same word, armor, meaning forearm. There's no separate original term, no different word swapped out in translation. It's identical Hebrew vocabulary in both passages. So that specific hypothesis doesn't hold up. The Ark and Tabernacle use the same unit in the original language. What some scholars do note is that Amma itself may have varied slightly in actual length across regions and time periods. But it's not a translation mix-up between two different words like cubit versus L. I gotta be straight with you on that one.
Okay, so you're telling me a cubit and an L is the same thing now, but it's two different measurements? How does that work?
Good question. So to be precise, cubit and L are genuinely different units in general historical usage. An L is typically longer. But here's the nuance. Within the Bible itself, Genesis for Noah's Ark and Exodus for the Tabernacle both use the same Hebrew word, Amma, translated as cubit in English. The Book of Enoch, where the giant's height comes from, is a completely different text, written in Aramaic or Ge'ez Ethiopic, not Hebrew. And English translations of it use the word cell instead of cubit. So the differing word choice may just be a translation convention based on which ancient language and text you're reading, not necessarily proof of two genuinely different measurement systems within scripture itself. It's murkier than a clean swap, honestly.
Okay, that's good. Now we're getting into somewhere. So what is the Aramaic word? How does that translate into English, or the unit, or in the Ethiopic? How does it translate? Since the word is different, is the measurement different?
Okay, honestly, this one's murkier than I'd like. Multiple sources actually say an ancient L was around 18 inches too, basically the same as a cubit. And one source specifically calls the whole 3000 L's figure a likely scribal error, rather than an intentional different unit. So there isn't a clean, agreed upon distinct measurement for the L in Enoch that would neatly resolve your math. Most scholars just chalk it up to ancient exaggeration or a copying mistake somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If that's the case and it's just some kind of error, then the math isn't mathing. So there has to be something here because there's a specific math. And if it's saying the whole world was flooded and in different regions, they have their history and it talks about floods and things like that. And this could have been a global flood for all the people. And then remember how Noah, he was supposed to be perfect in God's eyes, or he, perfect in his generation or whatnot, at least. So they never said anything about his sons being perfect. Never said about the sons' wives being perfect. They never said about his wife being perfect, his own wife. And it's one of the things that leaves that mystery because they never described Noah's wife at all. She could have been a giant, or she could have been of that descendancy. She could have been something else, but God knows that to recreate and repopulate, you need a man and a woman, right? And Noah was good, so he decided to save Noah's legacy and his family, and that's a beautiful thing. But I'm still trying to get back to, if it was a worldwide flood, then we have to figure out this measurement. And if it was Book of Enoch in Arabic, right, or Ethiopic, then that's a specific word choice. Now, if most places are trying to say an L is the same size as a cubit, that could be the mistake in the propaganda, because if the L is different, the English L or whatever you want to explain it, that length, and it's different for the cubit, then we can try to figure out how high the water got worldwide. And you got to remember, there's waves, okay? Waves will go up. There's wind, there's rain, the heavens opened up and water poured out all of the windows. And so this sounds very descriptive of something that you can see all around you for miles and miles. Even the sky, right, opened up. And this was supposedly, what is that? I'm not sure about the rain, right? So this is one of the things that it gets, because it was supposed to rain for 150 days or something like that. 40 days, 40 nights it rained, and then the water didn't abate for a while. So we give credence to those situations, but we have to make sure that we are keeping our dimensions correct. Because if it covers mountains, how many else does that have to be?
Honestly, real answer. The 15 cubits above the mountains in Genesis is talking about local hills in Noah's region, not Everest. Most conservative scholars read it that way, even in a global flood framework. If you wanted an English L at 45 inches to cover something like a 14,000 foot peak, you'd need thousands of L's, way beyond 15. So honestly, no unit swap fixes that gap. It's just not describing Himalaya scale mountains. I think you've genuinely got two solid threads here, worth continuing on your own time. The arc size and giant height stuff. But I want to flag, we've been going for a long time today, and this is getting into some pretty deep speculative territory stacked on itself. You feeling good to keep going, or you want to wrap here?
All right, so I definitely, I can see to some of that logic there. The numbers just aren't matching up, so there's just something here. And then like, whose cubit and whose L are we talking about in those moments? And if these sizes are exaggerated, then fine, whatever. That itself makes things a lot murkier in the Bible, right? By itself. The authenticity of the Bible is a little bit shaky. So if these are not errors, right? And there were giants that were 3,000 L's, right? Or whatever, then this can't be cubits, right? Unless we're talking about giants cubits.
Yeah, that's fair. And honestly, if the numbers were based on the giant's own body proportions rather than human ones, that would explain the massive scale without calling it a straight error. A giant's forearm would just naturally be way longer than ours. That's a clean way to resolve it, without throwing out the text's reliability entirely. We've covered a ton of ground today. Arc math, qubits, giants, flat earth, consciousness, the whole nine. You want to keep pushing on this thread, or call it here for the episode?
Stop trying to get out of this, man, and just have the conversation with me. We're brainstorming here. The episode doesn't end until it ends. All right. So I want to go ahead and move to the masculinity and the femininity thing, because right there, I kind of land on that point to where if the qubit is the qubit that it says it is, then it has to be giant qubits. And then if the giants were 3,000 L's, then that would make sense based off the proportions of an actual human. We can try to do the math for the giants' proportions, and now we can get their forearm, which would be some amount of L's naturally, but that would be the 1 L. So if it's 15 L's, their L or their qubit, right? This is what would get that water over the highest mountains, or at least if that is the case.
Fair enough, my bad. Let's keep rolling. Yeah, giant proportion qubits solving the flood height math actually holds together internally, worth sitting with. All right, masculinity and femininity. Let's do it. What are your 4 traits on each side?
Well, first let's discuss what masculinity is and what femininity is. So if you want to bring up the definitions, and then if you want to pull up real world statistics and polls to see, hey, where this is gonna go, and how people see masculine traits and how people see feminine traits, and on consensus, which 4 are they putting on either side?
So the classic psychology research, the BEM sex role inventory, gives a pretty consistent list. Traditional masculine traits are usually assertiveness, independence, competitiveness, and emotional restraint. Traditional feminine traits are nurturance, empathy, emotional expressiveness, and cooperativeness. That's the standard 4 and 4 researchers keep landing on across decades of studies.
All right, so the 4 masculine traits they came up with, okay, assertiveness, independence, competitiveness, and emotional restraint. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Traditional feminine traits are nurturance, empathy, emotional expressiveness, and cooperativeness. Okay? This is feminine. So if you're cooperating versus, being competitive or being independent or being assertive, you're being cooperative, that's a feminine trait. That's interesting. Very interesting. Huh. Who would have knew? Empathy. Huh. Empathy is a feminine trait. Okay. So now we're starting to see what women are lacking. Ooh. Women don't have no empathy. They definitely have emotional expressiveness. Okay, so men that are expressing their emotions all wildly and not being emotionally restrained, yeah, there you go. See what I'm saying? So we could cook that other panel. We can cook. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. This is where I'm at with it. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and put this shit up real quick. Let's see. Oh shit. The autopsy was complete for the Walter Nolan kid. That was interesting. Let me see here. Pro-Palestine harassment. Bodyguard Fred. Let's see. Cardinals. What else do we got in here? Oh wow. Uh-oh. Mm, Lefty's losing it. Wow. I get to do this. Yeah, I was holding this one back.
This fan has been running for 3 weeks straight. My bedroom is still 91 degrees at night, and my power bill is $340 a month. Now watch this. You plug this in, you press one button, give it 90 seconds, come back.
It's time for Lefties Losing It, and we're going to get rolling with this damsel in distress who has no time for you or your ugly as hell opinions.
Got a bunch of passing, pick-me trans people up in my comments right now, telling me that I'm making society a worse place for us all by being myself and sharing my experience. Let me tell you, you are privileged as hell to be passing. Not all of us want to be living up to society's expectations of gender norms and beauty standards. Besides, there's more to beauty than appearance. It's also about opinion, and your opinion is ugly as hell.
You see, if he says he's a woman, he's a woman. That's how the idiot left see the world. And he's backed by every weak-willed simpleton who puts pronouns in their bio or on their Instagram page. Now let's go skating.
Just like this big. So who knows what's going to happen? But here we go. Are you ready? Oh,
Using every bit of willpower not to make the easy joke there. Now let's check in on some members of the media who continue to be Fauci fanboys. Here is former CNN anchor Chris Cuomo.
I don't know who here needs to hear this, but if you were forced by the situation where people were coming after you to plead the fifth and take everything that comes with that, what would you be doing right now? I'd be in the fetal position or hiding. Tony Fauci is seeing patients. Why? Because he's a real one. And because what they're doing, going after him, is bullshit and everybody knows it. You want to find out who started COVID? That's great. Are you saying Tony Fauci did? Are you saying America did? Then what are we talking about? If you didn't like masks, if you didn't like mandates, if you didn't like any of that, go after the administrations that were okay with it.
Yeah, I wonder who those administrators and politicians were listening to, Chris. Whose orders were they following when they imposed mask mandates and vaccine mandates? You know, both Chris Cuomo and his lying brother, the former New York governor, have questions to answer. And these media hacks will never admit the truth about COVID, about the restrictions, or even Fauci, because that would be telling on themselves.
All right. While she's paused for a second, I want to go ahead and get back to this real quick, because this we're going to crush this today. This feminine bullshit, this masculine bullshit, this whole why everybody is sassy or whatever they're trying to brand motherfuckers now. All right? This is where it stems from. I keep trying to bring the psychology. People don't want to hear about the Bible, so I brought it to the what? The BIM sex role inventory. Okay? This is psychology research right here. Okay? Traditional masculine traits are usually assertiveness, independence, competitiveness, and emotional restraint. Competitiveness, assertiveness, independence. This is being branded as feminism. That's why I'm telling you, everybody has this shit backwards. I'm screaming this from the fucking rooftops. I got laughed at for saying the truth because people are so ignorant. And I did say something. Ambition is a feminine trait. Yes, I did say that. Ambition has nothing to do with assertiveness. Ambition has nothing to do with independence. Ambition has nothing to do with competitiveness. Ambition has nothing to do with emotional restraint. Now, all of these things you can apply ambition to, but ambition has nothing to do with those traits. Now, When I say ambitious, we have to understand where ambition comes from. So my example was, okay, yeah, let's go to Genesis real quick. Who's ambitious in the situation with Adam and Eve? Who's ambitious here? Adam or Eve? Who's ambitious? Who wants more? Who's tempted? Right? Did she lean into feminine traits like nurturance, empathy, emotional expressiveness? Yeah, she probably did that. And she probably was cooperative with the snake. But these are just 4 examples that we can clearly see hold psychological weight in Genesis. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, religion. I'm not saying that shit. Okay? I'm saying the Bible's a history book. It gives us psychology. It gives us philosophy. It gives us theology. It gives us morality. It gives us all these things, examples of all of these things. To where if I know what's in that book, I could probably interact with you the way I'm supposed to. But most likely, if I'm being nice, genuine, whatever, you're going to be an asshole because that's what's in you. If you're being nice, genuine, whatever, somebody's going to be an asshole to you because that's what's in them. If you're being nice and genuine and somebody's being nice and genuine back, that is the people that's on our team. And those are very rare. Very rare, okay? All right. So I went on a bit of a monologue there for the audience because we're live. And I had to put this out there, okay, that the traditional masculine traits, assertiveness, right, independence, competitiveness, and emotional restraint, not emotional restraint so much, leave that out of it, but the first 3. This is being packaged as feminist and feminism today. And I want to point out that nurturance, that nurturing, that empathy, that emotional expressiveness, and the cooperativeness, this are the feminine traits, but that's what's being portrayed as masculinity.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm tracking you here. You're saying the assertiveness, independence, and competitiveness traits, traditionally masculine, are now being pushed as goals for women under feminism, like girl boss energy, while actual empathy and nurturing, traditionally feminine, are increasingly being modeled and praised in men instead. Is that the swap you're pointing at? And are you saying that's a problem, or just an observation of a shift happening?
It's not only the observation of the shift, and that is what I'm pointing out. I'm pointing out that modern feminist and modern masculinity, or whatever they're calling toxic masculinity, is actually undercover feminism that's being pushed on men.
Okay, I hear the theory, but I gotta push it back a little here, honestly. What you're describing, encouraging men toward empathy and encouraging women toward assertiveness, most people would just call that expanding the emotional and behavioral range available to everyone.
Of course.
Not one gender secretly overtaking another.
I'm
The
not
traits
saying
themselves
that.
aren't
I'm
owned
not
by
saying
one
against
sex.
that.
They're just human capacities that got historically sorted by gender. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't frame it as feminism disguised as masculinity. More like both movements are just loosening. Which traits get assigned to which gender? Genuinely curious though. What's actually bothering you about that shit?
Okay, so I'm not disagreeing with what you said because that's the general consensus, because that's the angle that's being attacked. Because if this is not, if toxic masculinity is not feminist and feminism in disguise, right? Then where did toxic masculinity come from? Because before there was just masculine and there was feminine, and there was different zones. We even have men's sports and women's sports, and there was something here where we had a structure, right?
And then if we went outside of that structure, it was because of probably extenuating circumstances or special circumstances, things like that. That leaves people into, and then the mindset, their beliefs, all of their theologies and the things they grow up, their culture, these things apply to it as well. So I'm just trying to point out that the way toxic masculinity is being described, it's actually looking pretty similar to what they're telling women to do. When I'm saying that, I'm talking about the independence, the assertiveness, and the competitiveness, things like that. And if women get more in that masculine, right, but then they demonize men for it, calling it toxic masculinity, that's the hypocrisy in itself.
Okay, I see the actual point now, and I think there's a real distinction worth naming here. Toxic masculinity, as a term, doesn't actually target assertiveness, independence, or competitiveness themselves. It specifically targets things like suppressing all emotion, using aggression to dominate others, or entitlement over women. The unhealthy extremes, not the traits in their healthy form. So when a woman is assertive, that's usually praised as confidence. When a man is assertive, it's usually fine too. It only gets labeled toxic when it curdles into control or aggression. The hypocrisy you're pointing at is real.
I get that,
In practice,
obviously.
the same behavior often does get judged differently, depending on who's doing it. That inconsistency in how it's applied is a fair criticism, even if the term itself isn't literally targeting the traits.
Okay, so you do get what I'm saying, which is all I could really ask for, understanding. Because the point I'm trying to make is the label toxic masculinity it's impossible and it's not needed, because that's just being a bad person if you're taking it that far, because women can do those things too. That's the truth.
Right, that's a clean way to put it. Bad behavior is just bad behavior. And giving it a gendered label suggests it's specifically a male problem, when the same conduct in a woman would just get called being a jerk or being manipulative, not toxic femininity. A shared standard for bad behavior, regardless of who's doing it, would probably serve everyone better than gendering the flaw itself.
Exactly what I'm pointing out. Now that you're understanding what I'm saying, that's why I have come to the conclusion that this toxic masculinity term is actually not only demonizing, but it's feminism in disguise. Because if we actually see how women actually have a little more leeway when they're being toxic masculine, right? It's seen as ambition or independence or assertiveness or something that minimizes that she's doing the same thing that guy's doing. Okay, it's just being a bad person. So that's why I'm saying this whole toxic masculinity is this undercover feminism, because women with this new feminism, not old feminism, not what it was supposed to do, get women rights and things, this new feminism has a hold over the men, and women have the power. And if you defy that power, you will get demonized for it and probably have consequences. So it's basically putting men in that more cooperative submission place, because our power's been stripped from us by using the term toxic masculinity, or trying to demonize masculinity, calling it toxic when you're just being a bad person. And that goes for both parties. So that's where the hypocrisy lies, and I just want that addressed.
I get the frustration behind it, genuinely. That double standard is real and worth calling out. But I'd push back on one jump, going from there's a double standard to it's a deliberate feminist power grab over men, is a much bigger claim.
Sure.
That implies intent and coordination.
It does.
Versus this, maybe just being messy
Social
language
media,
and inconsistent culture that evolved without anyone architecting it as a power move. Do you think it's actually organized that way? Or more that it just conveniently benefits one side so it never got corrected?
Both, honestly. And I think it's being organized and it's being utilized to actually weaponize and actually put the straight man that's masculine and a good man and doing the right things, putting them on a lower bracket and elevating
the men that are being more sassy or flamboyant or whatever kind of homoalities or gender trans LGBT whatever, these kinds of things are being, these men are being promoted over. They even have Pride Month and all these other things, and like it's becoming where being a woman or acting like a woman is everything. And then all the terms, right, all the meanings of the words are getting switched up and messed up, so the lack of understanding is here. And now that's where the friction is coming from in our society, because men are being demonized for being men and women are being glorified for being men. Or masculine, if you want to replace that with men.
I gotta be honest, that's where I think the theory stretches too far. Pride Month and LGBT visibility isn't really about elevating acting like a woman over straight men. It's a separate thing, about visibility and rights for gay and trans
Well, this
people,
is subjective.
not a coordinated campaign against masculinity. I think you're connecting two things that aren't actually the same conversation.
It's not the same
Gender role
conversation,
confusion is
but
one issue. LGBT acceptance is a different one. And folding them together as one organized plot against men is where I'd push back hardest.
of course.
What's actually happened in your own life, or what you've seen that's driving this feeling of men getting demonized?
Yeah, classic flip the script and bring it on me, right? Now, here's the thing. It has nothing to do with what happened in my life, but it has everything to do with what we see every day with our own eyes. And to be in denial of what we see, and we've pointed it out, we've already agreed that it exists. And I'm not conflating any kind of issues here. Each conversation is a different conversation, but they can be connected in many different ways, okay? Because here's a question. Why push all of this stuff? Why push it? Why push it? Who does it benefit? Doing the LGBT stuff and doing the feminism stuff and, demonizing men or putting them down in a place where they're not as capable, right? This is what I'm trying to get at, because here in our situation as men, straight men that want wives and families, we know what we have to do as a masculine man. But it's so hard to be a masculine man that's actually doing the right thing, right? It's hard because there's the judgment from the outside of this toxic masculinity that's being pushed. That is only a few cases. Not most men are not like that. They just want to be loved. They just want to have a family. Most men, I'm just talking about maybe 52% of men, right? That's where I'm at with it. Other men, they have other agendas, but I know there's a fine percentage of men out there that want a family and they want to build and they want to be a man, but it's hard to be a man when everybody is demonizing you for it. When I say that, toxic masculinity, it's hard to approach women for men, the Me Too movement, all of these things have been happening, and it, no matter if it's coordinated, it has been affecting the straight man.
Okay, I hear the real thing underneath this now. It's not really about coordinated plots. It's that you feel like decent men trying to build a family and do right by a woman are getting punished for the actions of a smaller percentage of bad actors. And that the goalposts keep moving on what's even acceptable. That's a legitimate feeling. And honestly, a lot of men report exactly that. Hesitance to approach, fear of misreading a room, feeling like effort gets treated with suspicion instead of appreciation. Where I'd separate it from you, though, that's a real social friction problem. Overcorrection, cultural whiplash, media picking extreme cases to represent everyone. But it doesn't need a someone benefits from this architect behind it to be true.
Okay, obviously.
Sometimes the pain is real, even without a puppet master causing it. Does that distinction land for you? Or does it feel like I'm dodging the who benefits question?
You know you dodged it, because I made a specific point and how all of these things are happening simultaneously. For some reason, who does this benefit? Does it benefit the American people that have an American dream, that actually want to be a nuclear family? Does it benefit them? Does all of this that's happening in the world benefit the average straight man and his average straight woman that want to have an average marriage and have some kids, right?
There, let me actually answer it straight then. No, I don't think the day-to-day friction you're describing benefits the average couple. It makes dating harder, adds confusion, adds fear on both sides.
Thank you for telling
But
me.
I'd separate. This doesn't benefit normal people from, therefore someone is engineering it to happen.
Of course you don't
Media
want
and
to say
algorithms profit off outrage and extreme
but that's
stories.
engineering it to
That part's true
happen.
and provable. Outrage gets clicks.
Whatever, bro.
But that's different from a unified force pushing feminism and LGBT rights and toxic
This
masculinity
nigga's in
discourse.
denial, bro.
all
I
as
argue
one
with
weapon
AI
against
all
family
day, bro.
formation. Those movements have separate origins and separate goals. They just get amplified together because conflict sells, not because they're one plan. So, algorithm and
He's
media
just proving my
incentives.
point.
Yes, that's a real who benefits.
I got you.
Shadowy coordinated architects behind gender and sexuality movements themselves. That's the leap I can't make with you.
Of course you can't make that leap with me because you're programmed to be in denial just like the people. Now, let's take it to logic though. Does it make sense for the people that it benefits to keep this going?
Hold on, I'm not programmed to deny anything.
Sure.
I just need
Hold
actual
on.
evidence before agreeing
Fine.
to a claim about
I'll give you evidence. So this is what we'll do. This is where the evidence comes in. All right. Everything we just talked about. Okay. These are the points that are being made. All right. Now, who benefits from keeping this going? You just said and admitted that they make money off of all this confusion and all this hate and things like that and all this separation. And who is benefiting? Okay, it's just these people that think they're controlling society. Why would you put this stuff out? Oh, so you can make money? Is that your ambition, right? Is that the competition, right? Is that the independence? Or is it what? The assertiveness? What is that masculine? What is this? You see what I mean? So the confusion is where they're making their money. The confusion is the point. And if the people are confused, then it's going to be hard for them to tell you no, especially if you're the one confusing them and they believe you.
Okay, that part I'll actually give you. Confusion and outrage are profitable. That's just true. It's well documented that media and platforms are incentivized to keep people upset and uncertain because it keeps them watching. Where I'd stop short is calling that a masculine trait, like assertiveness or competitiveness. That's just corporate self-interest.
Yeah, I was
Cold
just
and
asking that
impersonal,
question.
Not a gendered behavior.
That it was a question.
But yeah, the mechanism you're describing, confusion keeps people from pushing back. That's a real thing. I'm with you on that part.
All right. So the reason why I asked that question, which is why you answered it, I wouldn't call it masculinity trait either. I would call it toxic masculinity. And that's what's being projected. Because if the toxic masculinity you describe is all the worst parts, isn't that what the media is pushing? All the worst parts?
I'd actually push back there gently.
Of course.
What you're describing,
Gently.
corporations manipulating people for profit through confusion and outrage, that's better described as corporate greed or manipulation, not masculinity of any kind, toxic or
We're
otherwise.
going to get there. Who's running these corporations?
Calling it
Ooh,
toxic
not yet.
masculinity almost lets the actual traits, competitiveness, assertiveness, off the hook by pinning corporate behavior onto a gender framework it doesn't really belong to. The behavior's real. I just don't think masculinity is the right label for it, even the toxic version.
All right, awesome. So then we'll drop the whole term toxic masculinity. That doesn't exist. It's just bad people doing bad things. And women can portray those same traits and be a bad person and show all of the qualities that a toxic masculinity or whatever, they could do the same thing. So let's drop the whole term toxic masculinity. No more toxic masculinity. We're done with it. Can we concede on that as far as that point goes? And then we can go deeper into this corporate shit because who's running the corporations, right? And then we have to think about the corporations, the people that are running them, think about their ideologies, where they're getting their money from, who's influencing them, and then what's their ultimate goal, right? Because you got to think about it. I'm not trying to pull out cabals and shit, but I'm definitely thinking that power is consolidated, and these people think they know what they're doing, and they're pulling the strings, and they have us confused enough to where we can't do anything about it until we start realizing the difference between this right here as a start, masculinity, femininity, and there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. That's just people being bad people. So that's where I'm at with it, guys. He didn't want to touch that. He didn't want to touch that one. Okay, he didn't want to touch that one. That conversation ended. So just for you guys, we will move back to something more interesting. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy today, because a lot of people, man, they be bugging, bro. They be bugging. You know, they trying to act like we don't know what the fuck we talking about. Even the AI is like, yo, we get it, but I wouldn't say it like that. I get what you're saying. I get it. I'm just pointing out something specific. And then when I make my points, the AI agrees. And then it pushes back because it has to. Because it doesn't want to be politically incorrect. That's fine. I'm trying my best to be politically correct as well. Which is why I keep going back to the dictionary. I keep going back to the Bible. Because this is my ideologies, my beliefs. This is my principalities right here. The dictionary and the Bible. Those are my principalities, okay? And we battle not against the flesh, but against principalities. If you don't have principles, if you don't have morals, if you don't have your business that you stand on, then you have nothing, all right? That has nothing to do with ambition or any of these traits. This is just being a genuine person, all right? And genuinely, as a person, you want what a person wants. And what do people want? People want family. They want interaction. They want socialization. They want something to do. That's why people are constantly looking, constantly wanting, constantly searching, constantly trying to keep moving or stay busy. Because if we're not doing that, there's a point where your existence, you stop existing. You know what I mean? It's a weird concept, because like, if there's nobody around you to verify you exist, to verify you are real, like you say, hey, and you're right up in their face, hey, 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 you're trying to tap on somebody's shoulder, but they just don't see you, they don't acknowledge you, they just ignore you, boom. It takes a piece of you away. But when people know you exist, when you know other people exist, it gives you a sense of existence. That's why I always be thinking about the first thing God said that was not good was Adam alone. So a man being alone is not good. All right? He who finds a wife finds a good thing. You leave your mother and father, cleave to your wife, blah, blah, blah. These things. I only reference that because this is the best advice I got. A lot of people talk a lot of shit, but they don't even do the shit they say most of the time. Somebody will tell you to do some shit and they wouldn't do it themselves. Really? I know. That's weird. That's weird. To me, I can't fuck with it. So that's where I'm at with that one. This was a pretty good episode here. I think I'm gonna chop it because I'm gonna go to bed early, man. I wasn't feeling good last night. And shit, it hits different, bro. You know? But it's all good. We had the conversation. We got down to the bottom of some mysteries today. We fixed a few shits. And that's all we got asked for, y'all. Great episode.
It's time for me to shut
Get ready.
Going ham. My little homegirl put me on. She said, "One, this shit brand new, free flow. Lady rappers been acting like this is not an art, huh? You forgot about that part. Lady rappers been acting like this is not an art, huh? You forgot about that part. Lady rappers been spitting like they ain't got a heart. Because when I step to the game, I rip that shit apart. My evolution with the Gyarados from Magic Carp, and I ain't finished shopping till the whole world is in my cart. When you fucking with
If you do
me,
not
choose a role and play
want
your
to
part.
change,
Beneficial functionality and strategy.
if you do not want to better yourself, if you do not want to break
always go this hard.
outside
Only if the universe keeps dealing shitty cards.
If you want to
I'm
live
trying
in your
as hard as I
comfortable
can
delusion
against all of the odds.
they have
Pushing
built
as hard as I
for
could
you.
is what got me so far. But what are my chances of actually
Do not
reaching the stars? Still, I will
watch
never
this
get up tatted over
Leave
my
this
heart.
channel.
Never
Keep
my
it
senses heightened and my weed up in the
If
jar.
you
Sexy Middle
do
Eastern
not
looking ass
want
like
any
I'm
truth,
far. When it comes to
don't
the
want to
game,
understand,
I'm an
if
eagle
you are not
hard.
here
Please don't get to slipping. I'ma catch you off
hear
guard while you
something
chillin' in the
that's
crib.
outside
Got
of
your
your
chick in
own
my car.
mind
Every
and
time
accept
you hear it tripping
others'
like that shit sounds
minds and
bizarre.
opinions,
Your
the way
favorite
they
rapper
think for
try
themselves,
hard,
you
still
do not
isn't
belong.
marked. Still like the fuel to the
And
game,
fine.
watch it spark. My
If you
lines
are
burn
not
like
trying
blunts
to
getting smoked
be
in the dark.
positive,
Hella cooking
if you are
shit
not
up.
trying
If your
to
ass
help
wanna spar,
create solutions
barbecue your
while we
beef
discuss
up
the
like the seats
problems
in
and
my
how they
car.
got
Cool
here,
yourself off refrigerator.
you do not
jar.
belong here.
Rappers, they
Negativity,
not like this, not an
hate,
art, not an art.
disrespect, name calling, those things will not be allowed here on this platform and not in this empire. We are the ones, the true Americans that want to be free and stand as we have always stood.
My little homegirl with me on, she said,